Now it's time for Viking Mail Call, a weekly show where you, the fans, get to ask the questions on your mind and have them answered by former Minnesota Vikings linebacker and coach, Pete Bercich. And now your host, Tom Moore.
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of Vikings Mail Call. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and we're here today to discuss the Minnesota status of Adrian Peterson with the game day radio color analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Bercich. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, and we get to talk about a little drama today. You all set to go?
Oh, we all love drama, don't we?
Absolutely. Well, you know, this Adrian Peterson story has dragged on since mid-September. But it finally took a major step towards resolution this week when Judge David Doty reversed the NFL decision to keep Adrian Peterson suspended. And it's a little tricky because technically he's still on the commissioner's exempt list, so he's not 100% cleared to play, but for the first time since last fall, Adrian and his representatives can talk to the Vikings. So, Pete, the fans have got a lot of questions for this issue, so what do you say we dig into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, first off, you've heard Peterson's statements he made a week ago to ESPN's Ben Gosling, where Adrian stated that he's still uneasy about a lot of things that took place within the Vikings organizations. And in essence, he's questioning the loyalty of the team to him during that period. And I want to ask you if you think he's being fair to make those statements about the Vikings management based on that unique situation that unfolded. And how much of this do you think is Peterson really being hurt, or how much of this is negotiation?
Yeah, when you hear things like that, your gut says that a majority of it is really negotiation. You would think they have to get leverage. They want to put as much as they can on their side, and that's what negotiation is all about. It's gaining leverage. It's putting yourself in a higher position. And whether or not those comments were directed at that, I mean, that's what my initial reaction would be. The question though I have is that requires a lot of planning. I mean, Tom, yourself, you've been through on the corporate side a lot of negotiations. I've been through plenty. That's how those things go. But you have to be very, very cunning, very smart, very strategic. The question is whether or not that Adrian really sat down with his agent and planned this thing out and said we need to get as much leverage on our side as we can, or if he just spoke from the heart for a minute. I mean, both sides here, Adrian, he's caused a lot of heartburn for the Minnesota Vikings, and he has to understand that. When you take a step back and pull the emotion out, you realize that, yeah, he's caused a lot of heartburn for this franchise, no question. And so with the Vikings and how they've reacted and how they've responded to certain things, I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't think that anything the Vikings did or said was necessarily out of line or intentionally hurtful. You're managing a situation where perhaps the biggest name in pro sports, in football for sure, is in a position because of pictures that were released that were not supposed to be released, is now in a situation where he has to defend himself. He has to go this route, so to speak. It becomes much more emotionally and painfully involved. And yes, I do put a majority of what we're seeing and hearing and the emotion of this thing on the pictures themselves. I know personally on Twitter, when we're talking about Adrian Peterson, people will tweet the pictures of his son. And there it is right there in front of you, what they're talking about. And you want to look at it and recoil because it's awful, terrible. But we have to understand, too, that the law has looked at that. The law has heard both sides. The law has done their job, and they came up with a conclusion as well. And you have to let the legal system kind of run its course. Now, Tom, I think in all of this, the part that's really the most bizarre is how the NFL has been acting. And with the suspension of with Adrian Peterson and then with Doty overturning it, what the league basically did was created a law, created a rule after something had happened, and then made Adrian subject and other players subject to this rule retroactively. Now, in the legal system, you can't do that. You can't arrest somebody after you pass. You can't pass a law today and then arrest somebody for doing that, for breaking that law 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago. And in reality, that's what the NFL had done, and that's what Judge Doty said. He said, no, you are punishing this man under a statute that wasn't in place when this occurred. And so the league is what is really, I think, the part of this that's kind of gone under the radar. I know we're talking about Adrian because he's Minnesota-centric, but the league has gotten themselves in a bit of a quandary here because they're trying to subject players to a law that wasn't enforced when it happened. Now, do the players now have to worry about that? Do the players now all of a sudden have to concern themselves that even though something has happened, that 6 months down the road, the league might change its ruling and then make them subject to it? I mean, that's alien to us as Americans, really, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the NFL decides to do.
Well, it's interesting because I hold the same opinion that a lot of this is more on the NFL than Minnesota. And interestingly, on Monday, Adrian's father, Nelson Peterson, had heard all the wild rumors that are happening through social media that Adrian had requested a trade, in fact, demanded a trade to Dallas. And his dad said, he never has demanded that trade, and he's actually open to return to the Vikings. But he also identified new Vikings COO Kevin Warren as one of the guys who was working against Peterson returning to the team. How do you resolve these type of disputes?
Again, you wonder if the Peterson camp wants his dad out there saying these things to release certain things, to get certain things out there. Is that the case, or is it a situation where you're talking about a father and his son, right? And we have to kind of have some empathy, so to speak, with if my son was going through all this. Would I want to say a lot? Yeah. Would I have a lot of opinions? Of course. Mm-hmm. However, in this kind of a case, I don't think anything good can come from a family member being invoked in the name of this contract, whether it be Adrian's wife, whether it be his father, whether it be whomever. Those kinds of things, they happen. And whatever Kevin Warren did or whatever he was speaking of with Kevin Warren, it's not personal. It's business. I mean, this is what this is, and the truth is out there somewhere, but it's always hazy, it's always gray, and you may feel a certain way. You may feel you were wronged by somebody. You may feel that you got a raw deal or someone's inhibiting this and that. And in reality, it may not be the case. So again, it's a lot of pomp and pageantry that just really evolves around a number. That number is the number the Vikings decided to write down on paper and hand over to Adrian to say, this is what we're willing to pay you for this year. Yeah. That's all that matters. That tells Adrian how much they want him back. So all that's been said and done beforehand is irrelevant. It really is.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned, an agent before, and I always believed that an agent was put in there not only to look out for your best financial interest, but to take the emotion out of it. You don't want the player hearing, hey, I don't think you're worth that much. And interestingly enough, this week, there was a CBS report that in a restaurant in Indianapolis during the NFL Combine, Peterson's agent, Ben Dogra, he got into a physical and shouting incident with Vikings VP Rob Brzezinski. And reportedly, as the two men were separated, Dogra shouted, Adrian will never play in Minnesota again. And, now Peterson's father, he confirmed the brush-up happened. So I wondered, what do you think of this incident? Is this a common thing to occur between agents and high-ranking team officials?
I think it's common, but not necessarily in a public forum. You don't sit down at dinner to get that far into it. Now, the interesting part is Adrian Peterson's agent himself, Dogra, who was with Tom Condon and his group, was released by Condon with cause, meaning that all of the contracts that he has done, that Dogra has done with Condon, were left there at the agency. So he did not bring any of those contracts with him. And, so he was fired. He was let go with cause. So something happened. Now, we know there have been reports of issues that he's had from a chemical standpoint. A lot of different things about Adrian Peterson's agent is out there. And it lends credence to the fact that he may go off at an inappropriate time. Example, in a restaurant. I mean, it's unprofessional to say the least. And again, maybe it was staged. Maybe it was what they wanted to get out there. They want those kinds of things to get out there. They want this to again build more leverage on their side. Personally, it's just bad business. Agents and owners and contract guys, they argue. Oh my God, they argue. It's personal. There's screaming. There's hollering. There's hanging up the. I mean, it's negotiations. It's how it is. But you're dealing with people. But to have that happen in public, I think is very unfortunate. I know Rob Brzezinski very well. He's not hot-headed. He's not that kind of a guy. So the part that interests me is I wish I could have been a fly on the wall or sitting at the table next to it to just hear, how this thing built up, because there had to have been plenty of inappropriate things said back and forth or whatever to get it to build to that level. It's unfortunate. It's not professional. But again, this is how the contract thing works, and there is a lot of evidence out there that Adrian Peterson's camp, that Dogger himself, has had some problems. So it's not, I guess, in that respect, it's not surprising. Yeah. And Adrian is a player. You've got to really think hard about who's representing you and how. And at this point in the game, he's stuck. I mean, I'm saying he's stuck, but he has his guy. That's the kind of trust and faith that you have to have in your agent. And unfortunately, players not saying this is the case here, but players a lot of times put their faith in the wrong people. And we've seen it. We've seen it with scams, with guys getting their money taken from them. I mean, it's a big problem. The league tried to address it. It's just that whole part of it is just that's a whole other 2-hour conversation. For Peterson's camp, I think they need to pull the reins in a little bit here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, that ESPN report that came out brought out a lot of different things. And one of the things Peterson said was he felt like the Minnesota media treated him worse in this ordeal than, say, his home state of Texas. He actually identified Texas. But interestingly, as you said before, the Texas court system was the one that re-brought him up for trial after it was dismissed. They also were the source of the leaked photos, certainly. And, Pete, you've seen the media from both sides of the fence, as a player and as a member of the media. In your opinion, has the Minnesota media, more so than the Texas or national media, been unfair in the treatment of Peterson?
I don't think so. Just what it is. If Adrian was born and raised and from Minnesota, would this be a little different? I think so, because then Adrian is now not just representing the Vikings, but he's representing the state and is a Minnesotan. People may disagree with that, but I just think that when he's a son or someone from your own state, it matters. I really think it does. And for the media in Texas, he's not a Dallas Cowboy. He's not part of their team. So it's a little different. One thing for sure that's interesting about Minnesota and the fans, at least the things that I've picked up on, are just how the fans are just so many of them have seen the photos and are done. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of people out there who don't care what he does or what he could do or they're just done. And that's fine. That's their right. These photos, of course, should not have been let out. And, it's tried in court and you need to get all the information and everything else. And they did down in Texas and they came up with their decision and you have to respect that. But I'm just amazed not amazed, but it's just Minnesota, and there are a lot of people who are just done. And Adrian has to deal with that. He has to understand that regardless of whatever he's done or will do, there are a group of people up here that are done with him, that want no part of him, that do not want to even see him, cheer for him, pay money to go see him, none of that, because of what happened. And whether or not that's what he's referring to or thinking of, I don't know, but he needs to accept the fact that, there are a lot of people that are going to be happy to see him back, but there are also going to be a lot of people who are just not interested one bit.
It's funny because it seemed like the public sentiment had shifted towards people being accepting of he probably wasn't coming back. And then, as time moved along, they got used to the idea of him coming back and being on the team. And he seems like he lost some of that goodwill with all these public statements. Would you expect the fans to be pretty quick to forget if he comes back?
I agree with you on that, Tom. And I think mainly there's a segment of people who again, felt, he spent a year out. He's, has he gotten his help? Has he done what he needs to do? And it's kind of that second chance group, if you will. However, this when something like this happens, and let's just say, for example, immediately you recoil and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe he did this." I hope he's done. I hope he never plays the game again. And then time goes on, and you understand, you learn more and everything else. And you're finally like, "Yeah, okay, guys, you should be able to work and blah, whatever." And then these things pop up. And then you hear the Peterson camp saying, "Wow, I was treated unfairly by the Vikings." And you sit there and go, "Well, you're lucky they didn't let him go." You know, they could have just let him go. They could have done a lot of other things. And so it just takes that group of people who have started against it and maybe have come to accept it. It pushes them back a few notches. And that's what this whole thing has done. I think it's, you know, people are just like, you know, shut your mouth. You've got a chance to come back. You know, if the money's right, come back and carry the football. You know, the rest of the stuff, no one's in any position really to argue that. So they feel. They feel that people who have done something wrong should be humble, should shut their mouth kind of thing, come back and just do their job. And this isn't quite what's happening because that's not how negotiations happen, especially when they happen out in the open in public.
So Pete, on Thursday, basically the announcement came out that the suspension was reversed at about 1 o'clock Central Time. So based on your experience in the NFL with star players like this, exactly how long do you think it was before Peterson or his agent were in contact with the team?
Well, I'm sure they were pretty quickly, you know, and I'm sure the Vikings were ready for it. That's not going to take a lot of time. The question is whether or not the Vikings are ready to put this to bed or figure this whole thing out right away. And you know, the NFL has stated that they want to appeal the decision of the judge. You know, so what do you do in the meantime? I guess with the ruling, it's business as usual until the appeal is settled. But yeah, this should get pretty hot and heavy here pretty quickly, and you know, hopefully we'll have a decision as to what's going to happen here pretty soon.
I'm going to roll forward and assume that all this gets worked out and Peterson's ready and he's agreeable to come back to the team. And, you know, historically in the NFL, the stats show that most running backs peak at about age 27. And when Peterson was 27, he put up that season where he had the second most rushing yards in the NFL with 2,097. Now, he's going to be 30 years old when the 2015 season opens. And I know he's a bit of a freak of nature, but can he buck those odds of running backs on the decline in their 30s?
I think so. I mean, he's still going to be a pretty good running back for a couple of years. Is he going to be able to handle the load that he has in the past? You know, I don't know. Him being out of the league for as long as he has, usually that's a problem. I mean, I know that myself. When I missed a season being on IR, you know, you come back and your body's just not. You just get used to that cycle of training all off season, going into the season, getting beat up, and then recovering, and then getting back into it. And when you get out of that cycle or you miss 6, 8, 12, 18 months or whatever it is of football, it's a hard adjustment. And to do that when you're almost 30 is an even harder adjustment. But again, I do think that Adrian he's a unique guy. I mean, he really is. And I've looked at him and said things before that physically I don't think he'll be able to do this and that, and I've been proven wrong many, many times before. So these are all things, though, that the Vikings in the contract end of things have to account for. They know these numbers. They see these things. I mean, they're concerned that they pay Adrian, if they continue him on his contract, he may make it 2 weeks into the season and get injured again. And then what? I mean, you have to be realistic. Now, Adrian may not think that. Adrian may be looking at it like he never missed a beat. This is what I'm expected to get paid. I'm going to produce. Of course I'm going to produce. That's how he thinks. But it's not an easy situation. And I'm sure the Vikings know all these numbers. You have to protect the franchise. You have to protect the rest of the team. You know, investing all your money in a guy who may not be able to make it through a season. You know, you have to account for that. You have to be ready for that. And again, this is all. Your heart says, yeah, Adrian's going to do it, right? You've seen him do it before. You remember all these great things, but you have to pull that away and then look at it again. You're dealing with people. That's what makes this contract so hard. You're not dealing with percents. You're not dealing with basis points. You're dealing with people, and it's just always gray. It's always cloudy. It's always emotional, and you know, hopefully they can get this done soon. Let the smoke clear a little bit, so that way when you get to camp, you know, a lot of this is behind us, and you get down to work.
I've heard this from optimistic fans, and I've heard it from analysts as well. And they say, you know, Adrian Peterson, another player who's been out for a year, they haven't taken the hits. They'll be fresh coming back. And, you know, you just hit on something a second ago that basically said it's hard to come back for that. What do you think about that concept that, boy, the player's going to be in terrific shape because he's fresh? Won't everybody be fresh after kind of the off-season off to get themselves kind of recuperated?
Yeah, they will, and it's a different kind of fresh. I mean, I know again, personally, having been in and out of the league, being out for a few weeks and then coming back, middle of the season, man, those first few weeks you come back when you have what they call fresh legs and everybody else is halfway through a season, that first week or two back, they're fantastic. And this is something that I've seen throughout my 20 years in the league is you'll see a running back or a wide receiver who will miss, and I'm not talking 2 weeks, but I mean like 4 to 6 to 7 weeks, a big chunk of time. That first game they come back, they usually light it up. They usually feel great. They're fresh, the whole thing. But that's the next couple weeks. It's like your high is higher and your low is lower. There's a reason you go through camp, because you're building a base. Because every single week you're building your body up and then you're tearing it down. You're building it up and you're tearing it down. And you get into that, you get into a groove with that. Now, if you miss 6 weeks of that, of course you're going to come back feeling great, but your body's not going to have the base, so to speak. And when you're done after that first game back, when you're feeling like $1 million, oh my goodness, is that a roller coaster ride? Because your body's going, whoa, wait a minute now. It's been a while since I've been this beaten up. It's called football shape. They call it camp shape. It's camp legs. It's all those things that you've heard the terms for that occur. So, in my opinion, yeah, it's going to be something. Because, again, they don't like him taking hits in the preseason. Well, what do you do now? He's been out for a year and a half. Do you let him get some carries in the preseason? I think you need to give him, if he comes back, you need to give him some play in the preseason. He needs to get 10, 15, I think, carries in the preseason just to get a few hits under him, because then, that first hit that he takes the first regular season game, how long has it been? 18 months since he's been hit like that? You don't want that. It's going to be different for him in a lot of different ways, and it's because he missed that chunk of time. If he thinks he can just pick up kind of where he left off, I don't think so. Yeah. There's a lot more to it than that this time.
Yeah, let's assume everything we see out there isn't smoke and mirrors for a minute, and all the things that have been said by Adrian, his agent, some of the things by his dad, they're real, and there's really a fractional relationship with Peterson that can't be resolved. Would you expect the Vikings to dig in their heels and say, hey, you're under contract, we're going to honor your scheduled salary and expect you to play in Minnesota, or would they actually explore a trade in that scenario?
Yeah, they would it's business. You're going to look at a trade. Will somebody else pick him up for what they're going to pay him? Personally, if I'm Adrian, and the Vikings look at me and say, yeah, you're going to play under this contract, boy, I'd be showing up with a smile on my face. He's scheduled to get a lot.
But there aren't a whole lot of $13 million payday years in our lives, are there?
No, they're not. Exactly. So, they're not going to have him back for that amount. If that were to happen, then yeah, Adrian, I think, would be very, very happy to come back. The bottom line is this: is that once that number is figured out, man, it's done. Get back to work. Let all the emotion and everything go. You just got to come back and get to work. And I think for fans, a lot of them are looking for a little humility out of all of this. Mm-hmm. And this is not the time in the process that you're going to see it. This is an ugly time of the process when everybody's going to be saying, again, building equity on their side of the argument. Look what I've done. Look what I've done. Look what I've done. And the Vikings are going, yeah, look what you did here, though. Look what you did there, though. And it's ugly. And again, once it's done, then I think there's a lot of folks up here that just hope that he'll show a little humility and just kind of come to work. And I kind of hope that too. And I expect that if things do get worked out, that he's not going to comment anymore on what his dad said and what his mom said and what his, or what his wife said or whatever. Just water under the bridge, folks. Part of the deal. I'm here to get to work, and just leave it at that. Yep. Because I think enough has been said. Too much of this has been out in public. It's a social situation. This isn't just a normal football contract where you're talking about numbers and carries and this and that. We're talking off the field incidents. We're talking about things that have happened with a child. There's a lot. This is a much, much bigger net that we're throwing over this negotiation here. And like I said, I think people will be happy to see him back, but they're going to want to see some humility out of him once this is all said and done. At least some. Let's just get back to work and quit talking about it.
Yeah. So bottom line, I hear what you're saying. You're basically saying you think they'll get this worked out. That's your opinion. It might be for reduced salary. I don't really know, but from a timing perspective, free agency.
It'll be for reduced salary, Tom. Trust me.
It will. Oh, so you do think it'll be reduced salary?
Yeah, they're not going to have him back under the contract he's under right now. No chance.
Okay.
No chance. There's no chance they're going to pay him the cap number this year. No way.
So free agency opens up here in about 10 days. Do they get this resolved before then?
Well, again, the longer they can drag this out, the more leverage they're going to have with that.
Yeah.
They say, look, Adrian, you're scheduled to make $13 million. I can go get 4 of you. I can get 3 guys to do your job for less money, and productivity-wise, we'll probably be in the same spot. It's leverage, man. It's how it is. You know, I'm sure they're talking to. I guarantee you, the Vikings are. They should be. If I was them, talking to every single free agent running back on the market and leaking it out. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why would you not let Adrian's camp know? That's the one mistake I think players make and people make, is that they think they're irreplaceable. Nobody is irreplaceable. No one. No player, no coach, no front office guy, no equipment manager, no coach, no one. Everybody's replaceable. And it comes down to that. And the Vikings need to send that signal saying, listen, dude, we can replace you. And with the money we got, we could do it with 3 people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, again, this is all part of it. And is that personal? No, of course it's not personal. This is again, if it were up to personalities and money didn't matter, then yeah, of course Adrian would be back there. But, you know, I think the front office and everybody there wants him back. They like him. They want him back. They want him to be a Viking. But just not in the business side. You can't do it at 13. At a cap hit of $13 million.
Yeah.
So get ready for that. Get ready for free agents, running backs. About 6 of them on an airplane. If this isn't resolved by then, you know they're going to be flying them in. Why not? Why wouldn't you? Build some leverage. You know, have guys in your radar. It's just how this thing goes. Get ready for it.
Yeah, it should be a fun 2 to 4 weeks. And I want to ask you one question before I let you go. It's unrelated to Peterson, but it is related to your statement of nobody's irreplaceable. And out in Cleveland, their first-round pick from last year, quarterback Johnny Manziel, he checked himself into a rehab center for treatment, which has been described as for significant issues. And meanwhile, the Browns just signed veteran quarterback Josh McCown. I got 2 questions for you, Pete, on this one. In your opinion, does this mark the end of Manziel's really short career in Cleveland after just 1 season? And second, have you seen guys struggle with this type of substance abuse, and what's that like?
Well, oh man, that's, you know, first of all, is it over with him in Cleveland? No, I don't think so. He's doing what he has to do to deal with an issue that he has, and I don't think any team that has a player who's actively looking for help, trying to get himself fixed, is going to just leave him out and kick him off the street, right? You know, you see what I mean? They may let a guy go and say, you know, you need help, bro. Go get it. But in this case, from what I understand, he was proactive and sought it out himself, and he's trying to get that part of him fixed. So I don't think it's necessarily over. Now, if you're Cleveland, you have to carry on from a business standpoint, not from a personal standpoint, but a business standpoint, saying there's a chance that our guy may not be back. And so we gotta have some alternate plans. Now, is McCown gonna be, you know, Manziel? Is that over? And that kind of, we don't know. It's up to Manziel to get his head right, to get himself on a field, and to get better as a quarterback. Now it's on Manziel. I think Cleveland has shown enough and given enough that they have to do what they need to do from a business standpoint and have that team ready. But Manziel's got to get himself right, which he's doing right now, I think. But when he's out, my goodness, now he has to get himself ready. And now you're going to see what the weight of living a life in front of the entire world is going to do. Those pictures he tweet from, down in Texas and down out partying, those things all are going to weigh on his shoulders the rest of his career. He's going to be under a microscope. It all comes back. It all comes back full circle, and he's got a long road ahead of him.
But from your experience, you've seen guys with substance abuse problems that have come back, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, and I've seen, we've seen guys also that, that haven't been so successful in it. This kind of goes back into, I have my own theories on these, or my own way of looking at it, and that with these guys, I've always said, what makes you laugh will make you cry. What guys do, and the personalities that they have that allow them to go out on the field and do what they do, because it's not normal. Mm-hmm. People have said before, I'd cover kicks and whatever for, 100-some thousand a year, no question. And I always say, yeah, you may cover one. You cover one, maybe two. But after about 4 or 5 of them, you're going to be sitting there going, no, I don't think it's worth it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It takes a special... These people, they're all broken in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And everybody's a little bit crazy out there. And everybody has, I think broken is kind of the best way of looking at it. But to function in that atmosphere and what they do, you've got to be a little bit crazy. You've got to have some issues. It's just a different world, different thing. And unfortunately, a lot of that carries over off the field, and a lot of guys can't handle it. And then things like addiction come through. And for those guys, realizing that they have a problem, and the big thing is going to be putting that problem before football. And those are the guys that are successful, of getting through it and recovering it, because your whole life, football is more important than anything. When you're playing, if you miss you miss a funeral, it's fine. Pete missed a funeral because he's playing football. Kids being born or whatever, you have all these things going on. Football's been a convenient excuse. Well, you can't do that anymore. If you have a substance abuse problem, that becomes number one. Football's number two, and a lot of guys can't do that. But the ones that can make it, put it number one, put it in front of everything else in their life after football's been number one in their life, those are the guys that can usually make it through.
No doubt. Well, there'll be a spotlight clearly on Adrian Peterson to find out how his situation comes out, as well as Johnny Manziel. And that brings us to the end of this special edition of Pete Bercich's Vikings Mail Call. And don't forget to check out Pete's interview with former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura that's airing now on PeteBFootball.com, and follow Pete on Twitter at Pete Bercich. And we want to remind you that Vikings Mail Call will return in 2 weeks when our guest will be Hall of Fame defensive end Chris Dolman and defensive tackle Henry Thomas. So until then, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.